I'm gonna let you in on a little secret, guys. I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and that's okay. We are all in a constant state of always trying to do what we think is best. We might feel like we're on the right track, but that may or may not be the case. Either way, if you're feeling unsure about your art, your creative goals, or your journey in life, it's okay to be unsure. And knowing that it's okay is a great way to help you to just start doing something. This is what The Subtle Art of Not Giving a F by Mark Manson discusses, and this is why I think it's such a great book for artists and creatives to read. This book definitely pushes some uncomfortable truths, so if you feel like you have a thick skin for that, stick around as I explain some of the points that Mark makes in the book. So I actually finished this book about a month ago, and it's taken me till now to really collect my thoughts and, be able to make this video for you guys. This book is really meaningful to me because at the time when I read it, I was kind of hitting a wall creatively. I was just needing some changes. I was feeling a little bit lost with my career goals. And this book really inspired me to kind of think outside the box, change my way of thinking, and it's honestly what partially inspired me to make this big brand change with my YouTube channel. If you guys don't know, the channel used to be called Art Bros, and I decided to change it to Nick Hagialis. I made a whole other video on that, but that was kind of the start of some of these career changes I made. And what's really interesting about this book is that the title is almost counterintuitive. You would go in thinking that this book is teaching you just to not care about anything, when in reality, the purpose of this book is to try to teach you what is important to care about. So that's why I think it's so great for artists and creatives, because a lot of times we get stuck in our head. In a creative field, it's really hard to discern like what's an important thing to pursue, what's something that's, should just be for fun, all of those kinds of questions. And kind of at the end of the day, like I said in the intro, it doesn't really matter because we're all on this path of constantly just trying to figure out what works best for us. And you might make mistakes, and that's totally okay. You might not know what you're doing, and that's totally okay. Or you might actually be on the path to success, and you won't really know until you just start doing something. So for me, especially being a freelance artist, I've kind of always had to work for myself and figure out my own schedule and my own planning and all of that kind of stuff. So quite a lot of times I've kind of hit this wall where I'm just kind of like, what now? What do I do now? What do I do next? And having books like this that I'm reading as I'm pursuing my goals are really great for helping me kind of, settle my mind, ease my mind, and it's almost like a reassurance that like, it's totally fine that you're still figuring things out. That's just kind of what we go through as creatives. So that's why I definitely recommend this book. So in terms of the book itself, I know I've heard many times artists, or just people in general tend to not like to read. And I will tell you, this is a pretty easy read. And what's great about it is it almost feels like a narrative because Mark opens up every chapter with a story either of his personal life or of, somebody he's read about. And he adapts that story to each chapter. So it's kind of like you're getting evidence of the point he's trying to make at the start of the chapter, which is really great. And it just makes it more of like a fun read. So the author, Mark Manson, has a very inspirational story himself. He decided to quit his very, very stable corporate job to pursue writing. And I feel very connected to this story being a creative myself, It's kind of an ambitious thing to pursue a career path that is a little bit more unsure and a little bit more, you kind of really have to figure things out for yourself. What makes this book interesting and a fun read is that he gives examples of seemingly terrifying instances and puts them into perspective. So an example, a funny example he gives that I thought was interesting was the fact of just like walking up to somebody famous or attractive or something like that and kind of having those butterflies in your stomach. And he puts it into perspective of like, they're just a person too. Like why, they might be feeling the same way. You just don't know. And a lot of these fears that we have as people and as creatives, when you really sit down to think about them, are almost irrational, because at the end of the day, the point he tries to make is like, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? And when you really sit down to think what the worst thing that could possibly happen is, it's usually not that bad of a thing. So hopefully that inspires you to, just start, because if you can get through that, then you can really get through anything. In the art community, the term imposter syndrome gets thrown around quite a lot. That feeling of not being ready for your role, or not feeling like you're, able to present something because you're not quite there yet, sort of thing. And Mark touches on this point in a really interesting way, because I think at the end of the day, what imposter syndrome feels like is it tries to make you feel like you're special. It's almost like a way of you rationalizing yourself feeling special for feeling like you're not there yet. But really, even professionals have the same feeling. Like, I get this feeling sometimes, right? And the way he rationalizes this thought process is because everybody feels it. It's, again, like almost like an irrelevant kind of way of thinking. It doesn't really make any sense to feel like that, because everybody feels like they're not ready yet. So it's something that you can kind of just cut out of your life, hopefully. Again, this book kind of helps you reconcile and negate those feelings by kind of just saying, F it, A lot of times you have to just do that with things if you really want to hit your goals and you really want to pursue the things you want to pursue. Another big chapter that he touches on is the whole theme of comparing yourselves to others, and he makes a correlation to the guitarist and like leader of the band Megadeth, how he used to be in Metallica, and he got kicked out of the band, and there's a whole story about it. But at the end of the day, it's seemingly as if he still holds resentment for this thing, even though he's attained to this level of fame and fortune himself. He's still always feeling like, oh, well, I've never hit what Metallica has ended up hitting. And it's just really interesting to put that into perspective, because it's the same thing for us as artists. You might become a professional, but then you're always looking at other professionals and you're like, man, well, I'll never get as good as him, and blah, blah, blah. And this constant comparing yourself to others can really lead you down like a negative rabbit hole. I think social media also helps this persist as well. And it's one of those things where you kind of have to just take a step back sometimes and analyze your own work, your own goals, and your own ambitions, and be like, what is important to me? A lot of times when you're constantly comparing yourself to somebody else, you're never going to be content with where you're at, because you're always striving for the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. I think it is admirable to want to push yourself, but at a certain point, you have to find that middle ground and that happiness of like, okay, I might want to do some bigger and better things, and maybe that will come. But if it doesn't come, I'm content with where I am now, and I'm just along for the journey. So I go back to this point all the time. I feel like it's in my, top 5 artist habits video, as well as I made a whole video on stop thinking, start doing sort of mentality. And that's also covered in this book. And I think there's really something to be said for that. I am honestly a classic overthinker as well. And I really have to take a step back sometimes and tell myself to just like start working on something. Just like, don't overthink it, because at the end of the day, if all you're doing is thinking about stuff and you're never actually acting on it, how can you expect to improve or, kind of get to where you want to be? So in the book, there's this really interesting quote where Mark's teacher told him something, and I'm gonna read this to you. So he said, if you're stuck on a problem, don't sit there and think about it, just start working on it. even if you don't know what you're doing. The simple act of working on it will eventually cause the right ideas to show up in your head. And I truly believe that. There's really something to be said about that act of just starting, because the creativity just starts to spiral. If you're like staring at a blank canvas, for example, just start drawing some lines. Those lines might become a shape, and that shape might become a composition, and that composition might become a cool idea for a painting that you want to pursue. It's kind of like you never really know until you try, kind of thing. And I think it's a really important lesson for all creatives to learn and kind of abide by, where if you find yourself overthinking something, just take a step back and be like, okay, I'm just going to do something to get the gears turning. Okay, so this last point I feel like is maybe a tough pill to swallow, but it's something that's true, and it's very, very important to learn and to kind of note, especially for being a creative and somebody that's trying to pursue this sort of creative field, right? And that is, you are wholeheartedly responsible for your own actions. I feel like if you are constantly assuming that somebody is going to do the work for you, or somebody's going to give you the admiration or praise that you feel like you deserve, a sense of entitlement begins to occur. And a major theme of this book is sort of like vanquishing that entitled feeling. And it's really not a great feeling to have, right? You have to be aware that you are in charge of your own actions for every single step you make. And what's great about this is, one, it makes you accountable for your mistakes, but it also should make you feel better about your accomplishments, because you're the one that was in charge of, achieving that accomplishment. So I think that's a really great place to kind of like end my bullet points for this book, because at the end of the day, the whole theme of the book is, focusing on what's important, making sure you're not overthinking things, and you're just like acting and doing and trying to just kind of be a better person. And if, you get to this point where you're understanding that you're in control of your own life, then it's kind of like everything else doesn't really matter as much, because you're not placing blame on others for your failures. You're able to better accept your accomplishments and the things that you've done well, and you can have a clearer mind and see those things clearer. So I hope you kind of take that to heart and really think about how you've been perceiving yourself and the world around you. And hopefully this helps put you maybe in a better spot if you are feeling, kind of stuck or creatively blocked, like I told you I was feeling when I was reading this book. All right, so I think that's a good place to kind of leave it off. I'm really hoping that if you guys pick up this book, it will help you, get unstuck and move on to a place that you feel like you're continuing this cool, fun, artistic journey in a way that's fun for you and a little bit more freeing for you, and hopefully you can hit a little bit less of those hurdles along the way. I am going to post an Amazon affiliate link in the description below if you want to pick up the book. From there, it's really going to help me out and the channel out. And until next time, guys, keep on drawing, keep on painting, and keep on crushing it. See you guys.